Hello, welcome to this tutorial about the Aviramp Continental. Today we're going to go through a number of things, but let's start with what type of aircraft this particular model will service. So anywhere really between the heights of 1.9 metres all the way up to 3.4 metres. If we put that into aircraft types, then we're servicing anything between Boeing 717 all the way up to Airbus A321, but just the front door on the Airbus A321. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to have a little look at the Aviramp and do what we call a pre-trip inspection. We're going to check the main features for safety and serviceability before we actually use the Aviramp. This whole process in a live situation should take no more than sort of 60 to 90 seconds. First thing we need to check, first thing we need to do is let's make sure that the main isolation switch is switched on. You can see there when I switch that on that this green light goes off and on with me switching it off and on. This tells us a couple of things. So what this does is it says that there's enough charge in the batteries for us to use this particular model, and it also says that none of the emergency stops are pressed in, because you can see when I press an emergency stop there that the light goes out. So straight away we know there's enough charge and we know none of the e-stops are pressed in. Additionally, we have a digital display here. This tells us a number of things. You can see here we're currently at 70.3%. Also underneath that we have a battery status display, very similar to a mobile phone as well. So we know the e-stops are out, we know there's enough charge, and we can see there's enough charge. Let's carry on around the Aviramp. So now we're going to start looking at the stabilisers. Let's have a look at those, make sure there's no leaks around them. If it's been stood for a while, you'll be able to see if there's any leaks. You'll be able to see if there's any leaks on the pipework around the stabiliser, and we can see there everything looks fine. We're going to start to work our way down the Aviramp. We're going to check the motor here, make sure there's no leaks around the brake and motor there. We're going to check down the side of the Aviramp as well, make sure there's no damage to any of the panels, make sure there's nothing sticking out that is out of the ordinary. And as we walk around, we can see that everything seems to be serviceable. Now we're going to look at the front here. We can see again nothing wrong with that stabiliser, there's no fresh leaks around it. Everything looks good there. We'll carry on around the front. Again, nothing is hanging off. Everything seems to be in order. We'll check the swivel plate. The swivel plate seems to be working fine. Everything seems to be good there. Now let's move on round to this side. As we come round this side, we're just going to have a look at the steering system. We're checking wheels, tyres, obviously as we go around. If you've got solid wheels or tyres, then you don't need to, but we're checking for punctures at the same time as we're doing all of this. We're also checking this stabiliser and this side of the unit. As we can see, we're walking down, everything looks to be in order, nothing seems to be damaged. So carrying on now, we need to look inside the Aviramp as well, make sure there's no damage inside. So for that, we need to lower the entrance ramp. You can see as I lower this, it's not heavy. 2-finger, even 1-finger operation. This is because it's suspended using the gas struts that you can see each side. So as you can see, the whole thing is very simple to use. Let's take a walk up the ramps. So what we're looking for here is we're making sure that there's nothing that you can trip on, there's no FOD being left inside from the previous turn, there's no damage inside any of the ramps. Everything looks to be in order, nothing looks to be broken, nothing sharp is sticking out, everything looks fine. Let's carry on up. And again, we're going to do this for both ramp 2 and ramp 3. Again, the floor is clean, there's no damage to anything, nothing is hanging where it shouldn't be hanging, and we'll do the same for the top ramp as well. Okay, so now we've checked the top ramp, one of the last things that we need to check obviously are the crew stairs. These stairs are here really for the sole purpose of the cabin crew and people involved with the turnaround of the aircraft. Passenger usage really is not the main thing here, but this can be used in cases of emergency. So the last thing I'm going to check is just that everything looks fine here, nothing's sticking out, nothing is damaged, and it all looks as it should do. The last thing we need to look at now with regard to the pre-trip inspection is obviously working controls on the top platform. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that this remote control box actually works. We know that we've already turned it on down at the other end, but you can see now that if I try and operate the controls, there's nothing working. A couple of things I need to do. Make sure this is turned into the number 1 position. And then secondly, I need to lift up and hold this start button. What's going to happen is this little light here is going to flash green and red. After a second or two, it will then start to flash permanent green. When it goes to permanent green, we know that the unit is ready for use. So there you go. Went from green and red to a permanent green. This will stay flashing a permanent green whilst the unit is in use. We can see that the remote control is functional. So we've checked everything that end, we've been up and down, we've looked around the outside of the unit, everything looks to be good there. Before I do any more with the remote control, what I want to do is just check that the top ramp actually goes up and down as it should do. This is a pull lock handle. You should be familiar with these using steps in an airport. So what I want to do is press the up arrow to start raising the Aviramp. I don't need to hold the pull handle, but as you can hear, it's quite noisy. So it's just as easy just to hold the handle until you reach the desired height. This is very important to me, it's very important to Aviramp, that we need to ensure that you know how to correctly use the pull lock system and the pull locks. These red locks here, each side of the pull lock frame, are the pull locks in question. What we need them for is to lock the Aviramp into place when you have it set to the correct height. If you do not lock the pull locks in place, then what can happen is the top ramp becomes very unstable. So it's very important that when you select the correct height for the top ramp, that these pull locks are locked into the holes as they are in that diagram there. So let me just demonstrate to you. So let's raise the ramp up. Let's say that that is our selected aircraft height. What we want to do is lower the pull locks into such a position. There we go. That the locks are held in by the pull lock bars. We know this is locked into position because I cannot move the pull lock handle. If I move the top ramp now, you can see I can move the handle. You can see the movement in there. Okay, this is not good for passengers. This is not good for anybody who is on the Aviramp. This is in line with every single set of steps that you operate on an airport. The pull locks need to be in the lock position before any passengers or staff are allowed to walk on the Aviramp. So we know that the top ramp is working. We've got it to the height that we've selected. We're going to put our remote control box on now, and now we can start the operation of it. To raise the stabilisers, what we need to do is push and hold in the up position, and you'll see the Aviramp and you'll see the stabilisers at the front here start to move. Whole thing takes about 10 seconds, 15 seconds. Okay, once all the stabilisers are in the up position, I'm going to very quickly test forwards and backwards. We saw that one's left and right, so this one is forward and backwards. We've actually got a two-stage controller on here. So it's two-stage going forwards and two-stage going backwards. If I click it into its first stage going forwards, it's going to go in what we call a snail mode. If I click again, it's going to go into a tortoise mode, slightly quicker. But for the purpose of this video, we'll do it backwards. It does exactly the same backwards as it does forwards. So if I press and hold backwards now, and then if I press and hold forwards, you can see first stage is slow, second stage goes even quicker. So I know I have forwards and backwards. We can see we have left and right as well. The Aviramp has been pre-trip inspectioned. We know it's safe to use. You're ready now, take it to your aircraft and deploy it onto the aircraft for use. We also have on this particular model what we call a proximity sensor. So this is preset at a certain distance within the factory. What happens is when you get within a metre of an aircraft, this will automatically go into snail mode. As soon as you get to 50 mil, 2 inches away from an aircraft, the Aviramp will stop. All controls become non-functional. It is impossible to drive the Aviramp any closer to an aircraft at that point. So really good feature, stops any potential contact with any aircraft that you may be working on. What I'd like to do now is show you the emergency procedures on this Aviramp that we've got here. Very simple, very easy to do. The first thing we need to do is raise the stabilizers, and then the next thing we need to do is release the brake. So this is the driven wheel here. All right, this has an automatic hydraulic brake, so the moment that you let go of the joystick or the control, the forward and reverse control on your tiller arm, it applies a brake to this wheel here. So that's the second thing we need to do, is release that brake. Number one, as I said, we need to raise the stabilizers. Very simple. You can see here that we have a stabilizer up and down lever, this one here. And you can see next to that, I also have a pump handle as well. So all I need to do is hold this in the up position to raise the stabilizers and pump the handle. Almost immediately, you'll see the Aviramp start to move. This is now lowering all the stabilizers. The whole process should take no more than 2 to 3 minutes. So as we get to the end, what's going to happen is this lever, this pump handle here, will start to go stiff there. And as it becomes difficult for me to move, I know at that point that all the stabilizers are in the up position. So the next thing we need to do now is we need to release the driven wheel, which is this driven wheel here. So all I'm going to do is take this red lever, lift it from a vertical to a horizontal position, and pump this lever half a dozen times. There you go, that's gone difficult to move. That brake has now been released. 3 to 4 members of staff, you can see me moving the Aviramp on my own there quite easily already. So within 3 to 4 minutes, you're in a position whereby it can be pushed away from an aircraft really quite simply. Once that's done, and to reinstate the brake, all we need to do is go back to our red lever and put it back into its vertical position.